So who of you would like to become an astronaut? Hands up. Oh, there's a lot of motivated people here. It's great to see so many like-minded people. And in the others, I hope to be able to ignite a spark of interest for space. For me, my dream to become an astronaut was when I was in school. When I came back from school, my mother was there because she was a stay-at-home mom. We first ate, which is very important, and after that, we watched Star Trek. And I thought it was super fascinating, the endless universe. And they had a great technical status as well. I mean, beam me up, Scotty, how good would that be? And also, they always traveled to unknown planets and met new civilizations, and I thought that was very, very fascinating. And after Star Trek was MacGyver. And yes, I had a crush on him. So, I thought it was really great how he was the secret agent, but he didn't use weapons, because his brain was his weapon. And he was able to fix everything just using a pin and chewing gum. He was able to fix fighter planes with that, right? I mean, it was crazy. So he got out of every tricky situation using science and duct tape. So for me, MacGyver on the Enterprise, that was an astronaut. And that was exactly what I wanted to be. So obviously, after I finished school, I became a hairdresser. Thing might seem a bit random now. It wasn't so random at that time because I started cutting hair when I was 10 years old. But yeah, and it's also a really good skill to have, no? When you fly to Mars or somewhere to space, I mean, who doesn't want a haircut? And then, after finishing my hairdressing apprenticeship, I started to embark on a new unknown scientific journey. And I had a lot of support from that, from my hairdresser clients, my hairdresser colleagues, family and friends, of whom some are here today as well. And so, after my hairdressing, I started to study mathematics. And once I was on that journey, I did my PhD in physics. But all of that, I think, is a different TEDx talk. Today we talk about preparing for uncertainty by flying to Mars. Because that dream was still alive, I still really wanted to become an astronaut and really had this curiosity for space. And so one day, a friend of mine that I did my PhD with, he sent me an email and it said, if you can't go to space yet, maybe you can apply here to become an analog astronaut. And I went through over 600 tests, and I became the first female analog astronaut at the Austrian Space Forum. Thank you. But I said now analog astronaut a couple of times, and I don't know how many people of you know what it is. I didn't know before I applied. Well, before I applied, I knew what it is. I Googled that, of course. But what is analog research? Analog astronauts are people that stay here on Earth in order to prepare for different scientific missions to space. And why that works really, really well, we see here for Morocco and Mars, because they have really similar geological and astrobiological features. We really want to do all the mistakes we can here on Earth, because otherwise it takes 7 months to travel to Mars on average, and then if you forget your duct tape or your keys to your Mars habitat, and you don't want to travel back for 7 months, right? And so it's really important that we do all the mistakes here when we can. And if I wouldn't have put now underneath the Morocco and Mars, I'm not so sure if you would have known which is which. Yeah, exactly. And I really like those two pictures because they were really taken apart from each other in similar times. And at that time in Morocco, there was a desert storm, so you get this nice Martian vibe in the atmosphere. And so we conduct different Mars simulations in this Mars analog regions. We see here, for example, one mission that we did in 2018. We were there in Oman for 1 month. I'm waiting for the picture there. And then in 2015, we had a mission before the Köhler Glacier. And how all of you think, that doesn't look like Mars. Yes, also that looks like Mars because on Mars you have permafrost and you have rock glaciers. So also those are Mars-like regions. Things that we study there, for example, is the human-machine interaction with a lot of robots, because we definitely need help when we move there in our spacesuits. And another thing that was going to be new is the workflow that we will have when we do different experiments there. Because there's a time delay between Earth and Mars, which depending on the planetary constellation gets bigger or smaller. So in our Mars simulation missions, we do a simulation of an average of 10 minutes. So if we're on Mars and we say, Houston, we've got a problem, then it takes 10 minutes to travel to Earth. And if they ask, what is the problem? It takes another 10 minutes. And I think if you have a problem on Mars, after 20 minutes, it's probably solved. So that really changes also the way that we have to work with the astronaut, because if you fly to Mars, you have to be a lot more autonomous. And so that really changes the workflow, because also Houston is a mission control center. And what we will have when we fly to Mars are mission support center, because you can only support, you cannot control anymore. And during our Mars simulation missions, we have a mission support center in Austria. If you fly to the moon, for example, the communication is almost in real time. It's a couple of seconds, but almost. It's not a lot of minutes. So we see here, you've probably all seen this picture before, Apollo astronauts with the American flag. But they had to prepare for that. Because before you fly to space, you first have to learn a lot of the things. You first have to learn to apply the things in order to then, in the situations, transfer what you learned into the uncertain moments. So a lot of things that they knew already about the moon, yeah, they did. But a lot of uncertain things was, for example, the consistency of the soil. Some people thought maybe there's like a dragon underneath the soil, and you always have to prepare for the worst case situation as well, but I'm not sure how they prepared for that. But they definitely prepared in different situations what the different soils might be. So they put the flag into different soils, and when they actually flew to the moon, things are always different than you practice. I think we all know that. So the soil was a lot harder, and they had a lot of difficulty in doing it, because they were so well prepared and tested so many different situations, they were able to extrapolate their learned and then put the flag in, as we saw in the previous picture. One thing also that we practice in our Mars simulations is that we have a spacesuit simulator that we see here. It weighs 50 kilos, and it takes 2 hours to put on. So it's made out of 3 different layers. So the first is like thermal garment, and the second one is exoskeleton. And that simulates pressure suits. And I think we all know when the International Space Station, they have those huge white suits when they go out to their spacewalks. So they're filled with a lot of air. And so when they move, the air gets compressed and makes it harder to move. And that is exactly what we simulate as well with the exoskeleton on our legs and our arms, that if you move your arms and legs, it gets more difficult. And another thing that we have then is the third layer, is the silver layer. And that contains different technical things. We have fans, we have a lot of sensors inside. And also we have another very important thing inside. You see at the bottom here, this turquoise thing? It's the called Razzle-Fazzle device. It's very important, because if you do a lot of strenuous exercise, or if you move a lot into the different scientific experiments in Mars-like regions, you start to sweat. And so when you sweat, your nose starts to itch. So we have this wonderful Razzle-Fazzle device so you can scratch your nose. But not only that, it's some things that you did not think about before, but if you have that helmet there and you can have also distorted vision a little bit, and you have all that, you cannot do those things, no? And also when we had the first American astronaut in space, they also underestimated that they need a maximum absorbency garment, what it's called now, also known as space diaper. So the first American astronaut was in space, and it was a bit of a wet situation because they forgot those human needs. So I'm always very happy when I wear my diaper. So even though we learned a lot of things already, there's always still something new to learn. We will now in March have the next mission, it's the Amadi 24. Here's the mission patch. And for 1 month we will be in Armenia conducting a new Mars simulation mission. And I'm really intrigued what kind of new challenges will lie in front of us, but I'm really happy that we've been training, and so we're prepared for uncertainty. So what do MacGyver, the Star Trek crew, the astronauts and the analog astronauts all have in common? They all have the curiosity to learn, and they all have the courage to face the unknown. So I advise you to learn, to apply what you learn, and then to do, and just transfer what you've learned into new situations to build confidence, because then you can be courageous and create the habit of lifelong learning and make uncertainty your new comfort zone. Because uncertainty is exactly what we will find when we fly to Mars. No. I was told this before, but I had to first learn, and now I have to apply what I learned. So now I don't have the beautiful music behind it, but here we're in the Oman desert, and we really felt like the first humans on Earth. So I would like to ask you again now, who would like to become an astronaut? Oh, very good. And remember that you can also be an astronaut on our spaceship Earth. Thank you.